Rejection and Stoicism. How to handle a no without losing your strength. Have you ever felt the quiet pain of being ignored? The sting of giving your best, only to be met with silence, or worse, rejection. Whether it comes in the form of criticism, indifference, or simply not being chosen, rejection hurts. And it hurts deeply, not just because we crave acceptance, but because we often build our sense of worth around it. When the world says no, many of us interpret that as, "You're not enough." But Stoicism offers a radically different lens. For the Stoics, rejection wasn't a verdict, it was a test, a mirror, a rare chance to reaffirm who you are, independent of what others think. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and philosopher, once wrote, "The approval of others? It means nothing if you have the approval of your own conscience." Epictetus, born a slave, was dismissed and overlooked by most of Roman society. Seneca, advisor to emperors, was exiled and accused. None of them escaped rejection. Yet all of them used it as fuel for personal transformation. This video is a deep dive into how Stoicism helps us face rejection without falling apart. You'll learn how to shift your focus from external approval to internal virtue. Because in Stoic philosophy, your worth is not determined by someone else's yes. It's revealed in how you carry yourself after the no. Here, you won't find empty motivational quotes. You'll find ancient wisdom, sharp, honest, and liberating. Because the Stoic doesn't need to be accepted to move forward. They only need to be aligned with their own integrity. Get ready, because the rejection you thought would break you may just be the gateway to your deepest strength. 1. Rejection isn't the end. It's a mirror. When someone rejects us, it's not just the absence of the other person that hurts. What truly stings is what we believe that absence says about us. If they said no, I must not be good enough. If they ignored me, I must not matter. But does rejection really mean all that? Or does it simply reveal something that was already inside us? Our fear of not being loved, our habit of defining ourselves through someone else's eyes. The Stoics taught that it's not events themselves that hurt us, but our interpretation of them. As Epictetus said, men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. Rejection, then, is just an external event. Someone said no. Someone walked away. Someone didn't want what you offered. On its own, that fact has no power. What hurts is the belief that your worth depends on being accepted. But what if it doesn't? What if rejection isn't a verdict but a mirror? A reflection of what you need to face. Maybe you've been forgetting who you are. Maybe you've been working too hard to fit into places that were never meant for you. Maybe you've been chasing belonging in spaces that don't honor authenticity. Instead of fearing rejection, the Stoics welcomed it as an inevitable part of life, and a perfect test of your character. Because if your self-worth collapses every time someone says no, then it was never yours to begin with. But if you remain grounded after rejection, you're building something far more valuable: inner independence. Yes, rejection hurts, but it also reveals. And only those who have the courage to look into that mirror can grow with honesty. 2. Fear of rejection and the illusion of control. Why are we so afraid of rejection? Because deep down, we want to control how others see us. We want to shape their desire, their opinions, their behavior. And yet all of that lies completely outside our control. This is where Stoicism offers one of its most powerful tools, the dichotomy of control. According to Epictetus, everything in life falls into two categories: what is within our control and what is not. What can we control? Our actions, our choices, our values. What can't we control? Other people's thoughts, emotions, and decisions. Trying to control the uncontrollable is a guaranteed path to suffering, and the fear of rejection is nothing more than a disguised attempt to manipulate how we're perceived. But when you deeply internalize the idea that the responses of others are outside your jurisdiction, you begin to recover your inner freedom. Imagine the relief of no longer needing to chase approval, to over-explain, or to beg for belonging. Imagine the power of simply being who you are, with clarity and virtue, regardless of who's watching. This isn't about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about no longer being emotionally enslaved by what you cannot govern. The Stoics weren't concerned with pleasing everyone. They were concerned with living in alignment with reason and nature. That meant accepting that not everyone would like them, understand them, or choose them. And that was okay. Your job is not to be chosen by everyone. Your job is to act with integrity, honesty, and courage. The rest, including acceptance or rejection, is not yours to command. When the fear of rejection loses its grip, something extraordinary happens. You become free to live with truth. And truth has a magnetic force far stronger than any mask ever will. 3. The silence after no, a space for rebuilding. After rejection comes silence. A hollow space that, at first glance, feels unbearable. No explanations, no comfort, no closure. Just the echo of a no that lingers within you. It's in this silence that many people get lost, desperately trying to fill the void with distractions, denial, or a frantic chase for new validation. But the Stoics taught the opposite. Not to run from the silence, but to enter it, to inhabit it, to let it do its work. Stoicism invites us to treat that emptiness not as abandonment, but as opportunity. A chance to see ourselves without the noise of applause or rejection. Instead of asking, "Why didn't they want me?" the Stoic asks, "What can I learn from this?" Or better yet, have I wanted myself? Or was I relying on someone else's gaze to feel complete? Rejection often reveals how disconnected we've become from our own identity. And paradoxically, it's in the absence of others that we can finally meet ourselves. Seneca wrote, "No wind favors the sailor who doesn't know where to go." Maybe rejection is not blocking your path. It's redirecting you to the one you were meant to take. A path of deeper alignment, greater authenticity, and inner clarity. To walk that path, you must not only tolerate silence, but listen to it. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but growth always begins in discomfort. It's in that quiet space, away from attention and affirmation, that you discover whether your identity is built on essence or on expectation. Embrace the silence not as punishment, but as invitation. An invitation to ask yourself, who am I when no one else is choosing me? That question may hurt, but it also heals. Because when the world goes quiet, your own truth can finally speak. 4. Rejection as training for the soul. The Stoics didn't see pain as punishment. They saw it as preparation. Every hit that life throws at us, loss, criticism, failure, rejection, was to them an opportunity to strengthen the soul. Just as the body is strengthened through physical effort, the spirit is refined through trials. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes strong by learning to endure what it must." And rejection is something we all must endure. The difference lies in how we respond. Most people try to avoid rejection at all costs. They shape themselves to please others. They betray their values to be liked. But the Stoics chose a different path. They accepted rejection not as a personal flaw, but as part of life's natural rhythm. To them, being rejected said more about the other person than about themselves. Their focus was inward, to remain virtuous, even when the world turned its back. That kind of resilience isn't born from indifference, it's born from clarity. Someone who knows their purpose, who lives by principle, doesn't crumble at the sound of a no. Why? Because they know their mission is greater than public approval. Rejection, then, becomes a training ground, a gym for the soul, a daily exercise in strength and character. Epictetus urged his students to prepare for difficulty like athletes preparing for competition. He said, "Do you want peace? Then prepare for war." In the battlefield of the mind, rejection is one of the most common enemies. But every time you face it with dignity, something within you matures. You begin to stand taller, not because others applaud, but because you're rooted in something unshakable. Rejection isn't a sentence, it's a test. And those who remain faithful to themselves in the testing ground, leave it unbreakable. 5. Rejection doesn't hurt alone, it's expectation that bleeds. When someone rejects us, it's rarely just that single no that hurts. What often causes the deepest pain is the collapse of everything we built around that yes we expected. We created stories. We imagined possibilities. We projected meaning and emotions onto the other person. And then, suddenly, all of it vanishes. The pain isn't just from being rejected, it's from watching the future we imagined fall apart. The Stoics warned us about the danger of illusions. For Marcus Aurelius, suffering doesn't come from things themselves, but from our judgments about them. We expect too much. We imagine too far ahead. And behind all that expectation is one thing: the desire to control the outcome. We want to predict it, shape it, guarantee it. But life doesn't bend to our mental scripts. It follows its own natural course, and often, that course contradicts our plans. Rejection, then, is an invitation to clarity. It asks us to let go of our expectations and embrace reality as it is, not as defeat, but as freedom. Because the more attached we are to how things should go, the more fragile we become. But the more we train our mind to accept what is, instead of clinging to what we wanted it to be, the more resilient we become. Epictetus said, "Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." That doesn't mean passivity. It means participating fully in life while letting go of the illusion of control. When you're rejected, you can choose: mourn the loss of your imagined outcome, or rebuild yourself with the truth that remains. Yes, rejection hurts, but the deeper wound often comes from the fantasy that never existed. And when you let go of that fantasy, you finally make space for real peace. 6. Trade acceptance for integrity. We live in a world where being accepted has become a kind of currency. Likes, follows, compliments, invitations, they all serve as external signals that we're on the right path. But what happens when those signs disappear? When the world is silent? When no one applauds, no one calls, and no one approves? For the Stoics, that's not a crisis, it's clarity. Because the compass of the wise doesn't point outward, it points inward. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The fruit of this life is good character and acts for the common good." In other words, doing what is right is the reward in itself. This marks a radical shift, from seeking acceptance to cultivating integrity. Acceptance is fleeting. It changes with the crowd. But integrity is rooted. It stands even when the world turns away. When you shift your focus from being accepted to being whole, everything changes. You become steadier, quieter inside. You're no longer pulled in every direction by what others think. You start doing what is right, even when no one notices. And that's freedom. True freedom. Not freedom from criticism, but freedom from needing to be validated to feel worthy. Rejection, in this light, loses its sting, because it no longer threatens your identity. Yes, it might still hurt, because you're human. But it doesn't destabilize you. You know life is too short to be lived according to someone else's expectations. And you also know the hardest respect to earn, and the most important, is your own. Seneca wrote that a wise person prefers to be good rather than merely appear good. That's the heart of this lesson. If you live to look good in others' eyes, you'll always be performing. But if you live to be good by your own standards, even in silence, you begin to build an unshakable foundation. Acceptance can be taken from you, but integrity, that's yours, if you choose it. 7. The strength only abandonment can reveal. Being left behind, forgotten, replaced. These experiences hurt deeply because they confront us with the rawest form of solitude. And in that solitude, the question arises, what's left of me now? The Stoic answer is both uncomfortable and liberating. You are. What remains is your mind, your character, your essence, everything no one can take away. The Stoics didn't view abandonment as ruin. They saw it as revelation, a chance to see who you are without applause, without affirmation, without emotional crutches. Marcus Aurelius endured betrayal, grief, and war, and still wrote, "Look within. The wellspring of good is always ready to bubble up if you just dig." Abandonment is not the end, it's the beginning of true self-reliance. Naturally, our first reaction is to resist it. We want to fix things, chase people, regain that lost connection. But that impulse is often just fear. Fear of facing our own echo. Stoicism calls us into that echo, into the silence. Because in that stillness, something powerful happens. We meet the version of ourselves that is not defined by anyone else. Epictetus, born a slave, knew what it meant to have nothing but the inner world. He taught that no one is free if their happiness depends on the will of another. And rejection shows us, sometimes painfully, where we've placed our emotional chains. It shines a light on the invisible dependencies we thought were love, or belonging, or worth. But when you survive abandonment with dignity, something unshakable emerges. You realize your strength was never out there. It was inside you, waiting for the silence to call it forth. Rejection didn't take your worth. It revealed where you'd buried it. 8. Rejection is inevitable. Your response is a choice. You don't get to choose whether or not you'll be rejected. You can't control if someone wants you in their life, values your presence, or understands your worth. But there's one thing no one can take from you: your response. And in Stoicism, your response is where your true power lives. Seneca wrote, "It is in hardship that the true strength of a person is revealed." And rejection is exactly that, a form of hardship. In the face of it, you always have two paths. Allow yourself to be shattered, believing that a no defines you, or remain steady, choosing to use the moment as fuel for growth. Yes, the initial pain is real. We are emotional beings. Rejection can awaken old wounds, memories of childhood neglect, fear of not being enough, the ache of invisibility. But even in the pain, there is a spark of freedom. You can choose not to become bitter. You can choose not to shrink. You can choose not to chase those who walked away just to feel worthy again. Because you don't need to prove your worth. You need to live it. Stoicism is not an emotional shield. It's a way of living. It teaches us not to suppress our emotions, but to not be ruled by them. When you choose your response, you're telling yourself, "I am more than this moment." That choice, made consistently, becomes a new kind of self-esteem, one based not on popularity, but on principle. Rejection is a test, but not a test of whether others see your value. It's a test of whether you do. And that's the choice no one can make for you. 9. Amor, Fati, when no is also the path. One of the most powerful Stoic teachings, especially through Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, is the idea of Amor, Fati, love of fate. Not just acceptance, but love. Not passive resignation, but active alignment with life. Amor Fati means saying, "I do not merely tolerate what happens, I embrace it, because I trust it is shaping me." When we're rejected, our instinct is to resist, to believe that something went wrong, that this outcome wasn't meant to be. But the Stoics flipped that thinking on its head. If it happened, it was meant to be. If someone said no, maybe that no is the most painful but most necessary gift we could receive. To love fate doesn't mean to enjoy pain. It means to understand that even the things we don't understand, especially those, may serve a greater purpose in our growth. Often, the rejection that hurt the most was the very thing that set us free, redirected our life, or refined our character. Amor Fati invites us to trust that process. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs." At first, that may sound harsh, especially when life delivers heartbreak, abandonment, or failure. But if you look honestly, you may see that even the rejections you cursed once became the very moments that made you stronger, wiser, more awake. The Stoic doesn't live in fantasy. They live in courageous adaptation. They don't ask life to conform to their plans. They ask how they can align their character with life's unfolding. And in doing so, they become unshaken. Not because life gets easier, but because their roots grow deeper. You can spend your life resisting the pain of rejection, or you can, like a true Stoic, meet it with stillness and say, "Thank you, this too builds me." That is the spirit of Amor Fati. 10. Rejection sets you free. When you stop betraying yourself. So, what remains after everything fades? After the no, After the silence, after the loss, what's left? If you've walked this path with the Stoics, you already know the answer. You are. Not the version of you shaped by approval, not the one edited for acceptance, but the core of who you are, untouched by outside noise. Rejection, when seen through clear eyes, is not about them. It's about where you've placed your loyalty. And the greatest betrayal isn't someone else walking away. It's you abandoning yourself in hopes that they would stay. That's what hurts. Not the rejection itself, but how often we shrink, adapt, or abandon our truth trying to avoid it. The Stoics, in all their clarity and realism, pointed to one place where pain becomes peace: your conscience. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, reminded himself daily that everything fades: fame, applause, affection. The only thing that endures is virtue, and virtue begins when you stop waiting to be chosen and choose yourself instead. When you stop molding yourself to fit in, you begin expanding into who you truly are. When you stop chasing approval, you start walking beside integrity. When you understand that being chosen doesn't define your value, you finally begin to live with peace, because deep down, you've always belonged to yourself. Rejection cannot destroy someone who is whole on the inside. It only exposes where you were still holding on to someone else's approval. And if you've lost yourself trying to be accepted, there's good news. You can always return. You can always rebuild. You can always reclaim the freedom that was never meant to come from others. You were not made to beg for space. You were made to take your place, grounded in truth. The Stoics didn't seek acceptance. They sought freedom. And freedom begins the moment you stop rejecting yourself. If this video helped you realize that rejection is not a sign of weakness, but a portal to your deepest strength, then just wait until you hear what the Stoics had to say about something even harder: being misunderstood. What do you do when the rejection doesn't come from strangers, but from the people you love? What happens when those closest to you, your family, your friends, even your partner, can't see who you truly are? In the next episode, we'll explore how Stoicism becomes your inner anchor when love, trust, and belonging seem to fail. How to stay calm, clear, and grounded when you feel unseen, mislabeled, or dismissed by those who should have known you best. You've already learned how to stand alone. Now it's time to learn how to stay whole, even when the world says you're not enough. Because in the end, the Stoics weren't seeking comfort. They were seeking clarity. And clarity is what sets you free. If this video gave you clarity, subscribe and turn on notifications, because your journey toward emotional freedom continues in the next episode.